She was just a nurse exhausted after another night shift when she heard the billionaire's brother shout, "Keep him sedated. Let him die quietly." The man in the hospital bed. Elijah Cross once built an empire to bring light and education to the poorest children. Now betrayed by his own family, he lay motionless, his life traded for power. Beside him, a single detail told the truth, a child's drawing taped to his monitor fading under hospital lights. No one else cared. No one else dared to help. Until she stepped forward. And in that silence, she whispered the words that would change everything. "I believe you. And I won't let them win." A still body, a racing mind. High in the Swiss Alps, hidden behind layers of snowfall and mirrored glass, sat the Bellacure Institute, a private neurological clinic for the ultra-elite. Inside its most secure suite, surrounded by silence and shadows, lay Elijah Cross, age 38. Billionaire, black, brilliant, and believed to be in a coma. But Elijah was awake. Every breath he took was calculated, each heartbeat monitored. He had trained his mind to ignore the blaring boredom, to mimic the blank stillness of unconsciousness. For 12 days he had pretended. For 12 days he had heard everything, because someone wanted him dead. To the world, Elijah Cross was a miracle of modern ambition, a boy from East Baltimore raised by a single mother who rose to become the architect of Helion Dynamics, the tech company behind Project Lumiere, the world's first emotion-aware, learning-capable AI designed to bring free education to underserved children across the globe. But that dream came with a cost. Months ago, Elijah had pushed for Helion to begin licensing Lumiere's basic framework to non-profits and public institutions for free. His plan was radical to level the global education gap with open-source AI. But Helion's board, fueled by defense contracts and billion-dollar profit margins, resisted. They branded him a liability. And now, just days after Elijah refused to sign off on a weapons-adaptable version of Lumiere for a military client, his self-driving vehicle malfunctioned on a cliffside road. His car didn't just veer off course, it was overridden. Someone had hacked the safety protocols. Someone close. Elijah had survived the crash with a fractured clavicle and head trauma, but not enough to justify a coma. The moment he regained awareness, he realized the truth. This wasn't an accident. It was a takedown. And now pretending to be unconscious was his only weapon. A click echoed from the sliding glass door. 2 people entered the suite. Elijah recognized the voices instantly. "We need to finalize the transfer before he wakes up," said Damon Cross's cousin and COO of Helion, voice cold and calculated. "The shareholders are already restless." "And what if he does wake up?" replied Ava Chen, Elijah's ex-wife and CFO of the company. She had always been pragmatic, but her voice carried a trace of something else now. Fear, guilt, ambition. "He won't," Damon replied. "Resnick's sedatives ensure that. Besides, his neural scans show minimal activity. The board trusts my assessment. By next week, I'll be interim CEO." There was a pause. Elijah heard a light shuffle. Then Ava whispered, "What about the AI core?" "The Lumiere protocol keys, I've already restructured the admin layer," Damon said. "If he ever does come back, he won't have access." Ava hesitated. "Do you ever feel wrong about this?" Wrong, Damon chuckled darkly. He tried to give away a $100 billion asset. He betrayed the company. I'm just cleaning up his mess. Elijah fought the instinct to scream. His empire, his dream, it was being stolen by his own blood. The door hissed shut. Silence returned. Several minutes passed. Then another pair of footsteps approached, softer, lighter. A woman's voice filled the air. Calm, precise. "Good evening, Mr. Cross," she said. "I'm Celeste. I'll be your night nurse." Elijah noted the difference immediately. She didn't speak to him like a vegetable. No false sweetness, just quiet competence. She adjusted his IV with careful hands. Then, after a long pause, she sat beside him. "I don't know if you can hear me," she began in a low tone, "but something about your chart doesn't sit right with me." Elijah kept still, heart hammering. "I've reviewed your sedation schedule. It's excessive, beyond protocol, and your neural scans show spikes moments of alertness. Someone's suppressing your brain activity." She leaned closer. "I'm not just a nurse. I have a background in forensic neurotechnology. I've seen this before. Someone's trying to keep you under for good." Elijah's lungs tightened. This woman was a stranger, but already she was his only hope. "I don't know who did this," she whispered. "But I'll find out, and I'll help you wake up." Then just as quickly she stood up the nurse facade, returning like a mask. The door opened behind her. "Evening rounds, doctor," she said crisply to the approaching figure. Dr. Resnick, the man who'd been drugging him into submission. Elijah knew then his only chance of surviving this war for his mind and legacy was this nurse. This quiet voice in the dark. He just had to let her know he was listening. And then he would take it all back. The first blink. Night came slowly in the Betrayal Institute. The mountain snow outside softened the moonlight, casting a silver-blue hue across Elijah's suite. Beneath warm blankets and quiet machines, the billionaire who was believed to be brain dead had never been more alive. He had spent years mastering pattern recognition, optimization, and probability modeling in AI systems. Now those same skills were keeping him alive. Celeste had returned for her midnight check-in. Her steps were quieter this time, more cautious. She didn't speak at first. Instead, she adjusted the oxygen saturation line, checked his pulse manually, then dimmed the lights to simulate deep rest. Finally, she sat. "I don't know if you heard me earlier," she said softly, "but if you did, I need a sign. Something." Elijah lay frozen, uncertain. If he moved too soon, he'd expose himself. If he waited too long, he'd lose her help, and possibly his life. Celeste sighed. "I can't believe I'm talking to a man who might be clinically gone. But something in your vitals tells me otherwise." She reached for his wrist to check his pulse again. That's when Elijah decided to risk it. He blinked. Once, deliberate, slow. Celeste gasped. She leaned in. Was that you?" Another blink. She froze for a moment, looking around the room. Then she moved, fast, professional instincts kicking in. She closed the blinds, disconnected the camera feed to the nurse's station with a quick override, and turned off the patient vitals audio monitor. Then she returned to the bedside. Her expression changed, no longer skeptical, but alive with determination. "You're conscious," she whispered. How long Elijah couldn't respond, but he blinked twice, then again, once. Celeste caught on. 1 blink for yes, 2 for no blink. "Okay, that's our code," she nodded. "Can you move anything?" He twitched his left index finger just barely. Pain shot through his shoulder from the old fracture. But it was a start. Celeste's eyes softened. "You're a fighter, Mr. Cross." She pulled a small whiteboard from the medical supply cart. Using a black marker, she wrote the alphabet in 2 rows and placed her finger over the first half. "Let's try something slow. Blink when I reach the letter you need." It was painstaking. Word by word, she pieced together his first message. "They sabotaged my car." Celeste's face turned pale. "Who again?" they spelled together. "Damon, Ava, Lumiere," her brow furrowed. "Lumiere." "The AI education project Blink." Elijah watched her silently wrestle with disbelief. Then her face hardened. "You were right," she murmured. This wasn't an accident. She stood up, pacing slightly, thinking aloud. Resnick. The sedation levels. The falsified neural scans. It all makes sense now. They're keeping you locked in while they dismantle your life from the inside out. Elijah blinked once. Yes. Celeste turned back to him. I can't go to the authorities, not yet. Not without proof. They'd bury this. Blink. But I'll keep helping you. Quietly. No one will suspect. She began disconnecting one of the unnecessary IV drips, lowering his dosage by just a fraction. We'll go slow. I'll help you regain motor function, and we'll build a communication system. Elijah blinked again, slower this time. The sedatives still weighed on his brain, but for the first time in days, he felt hope. As Celeste pulled a chair beside him again and gently massaged his palm to stimulate nerve endings, she whispered, "They think you're alone in this, but you're not. I'm with you now." For the first time in a week, Elijah allowed himself to believe it. Behind closed eyes, he began to plan not just his recovery, but their downfall. A plan in the shadows. The following nights blurred into a careful rhythm, a secret dance between awakening and surveillance. During the day, Elijah remained still silent and unresponsive. But as dusk fell and the cold, alpine air seeped through the sealed windows, Celeste would return to him, and together they worked. Each night she reduced the sedatives by microscopic amounts, enough to stimulate Elijah's motor cortex, but not enough to raise suspicion in the vitals dashboard monitored by Dr. Resnick's team. She brought basic rehab tools, a rubber ball, textured sponges, even a children's fidget toy, to rebuild muscle tone in his fingers. By the fifth night, Elijah could curl 2 fingers. It was painful, agonizing, but the small triumph made his eyes well up. Celeste noticed. "You're getting stronger." "Blink." She smiled. "You're a stubborn man." That night she brought something new, a stack of laminated flashcards, each with a letter of the alphabet. Faster than scanning rows. You blink once to select, twice to skip. It worked. They had conversations in slow fragments. Diana C. Celeste squinted. "Your attorney Blink. Loyal, they'll target her." Celeste stood up. "I'll reach out through back channels." Carefully. Elijah blinked hard. "Warn her." Celeste nodded. "I will, I promise." Then he spelled Resnick. Bribes. Her lips tightened. "If I can access his financial records, I might find something." That's when the idea came. She sat beside him again. "Elijah, if I get you a burner tablet with a neural-linked stylus, do you think you could use it? It was a risk." But he blinked. Yes. The next evening she arrived with a carefully disguised device. She disguised it as a portable EEG monitor. Inside it was a stripped-down Linux slate with secure encrypted messaging and a neural pressure input. When Elijah first touched it, his hand shook so violently it almost slipped to the floor. But Celeste steadied it. "One letter at a time," she whispered. "We'll get there." They did. Within 2 days, Elijah could slowly trace simple messages. They took control of Lumiere. Celeste stared at the screen, jaw clenched. They didn't just want your company, they wanted to kill the project entirely. Why he typed, "Lumiere helps poor, not profit." Celeste understood now. They wanted Lumiere militarized, encrypted, closed source. Ava and Damon see public access as a threat to Helion's weaponization contracts. Elijah nodded. Then painstakingly he traced a new message. "Stop shareholder vote. Proof." She leaned forward. "We'll need a confession. Or a link. Something they can't deny." He paused, then typed, "Camera office." Her eyes lit up. "You want me to plant something in Damon's office, Blink?" I might be able to, but I'll need help. And just like that, Celeste stepped beyond the role of a nurse. She became a co-conspirator in a silent revolution. That same night, she smuggled out Elijah's EEG logs, which she suspected had been tampered with. She planned to analyze them off-site through a trusted medical contact in Zurich. If she could prove the falsification, it would be the first crack in the facade. Meanwhile, Elijah pressed his fingers against the stylus and typed, "Must act before vote." When 5 days. Time was running out. As the wind howled outside the clinic and the moon cast long shadows on the snow, Elijah closed his eyes not in despair, but in thought. He was done playing dead. Now he would begin to strike back through whispers, through shadows, through the only weapon left to him, the truth. A whisper in the ice. Daylight in Bellature brought a different kind of threat. While Elijah and Celeste made small victories in the night, the days belonged to Damon and Ava. They paraded through the clinic in luxury scarves and tailored coats, speaking softly to staff, shaking hands with board-appointed observers, and making it clear that Elijah's reign at Helion Dynamics was near its end. To the outside world, they were grieving leaders. But behind the calm exteriors, Elijah knew the vultures were circling. On the 4th morning, Celeste returned just after sunrise, her hair still damp with melted snow. Her face was red from the wind, but her eyes were focused, sharp. "I planted the mic in Damon's suite," she said softly as she closed the blinds and disconnected the room camera for their nightly protocol. "I used a carbon filter casing. It won't trigger electromagnetic scans. If he talks, we'll have it." Elijah, now sitting upright for brief periods with her help, slowly reached for the stylus. His handwriting was shaky, but legible. Resnick Celeste shook her head. "Still guarded. I haven't been able to access his records, but I'm trying another route. There's a whistleblower at the licensing office in Geneva. She's seen strange transfers routed from offshore accounts connected to Resnick's medical trial grants. It's thin, but promising." Elijah blinked, slowly, processing, focusing. Celeste leaned in. "Also, I spoke to someone from Diana's legal team." That made Elijah tense. "She's under audit," Celeste continued. "Anonymous complaints filed with the European Ethics Review Board, fabricated, of course. But it's slowing her down. Warn her I already did. Used an encrypted drop. She's gone off-grid, but she's watching everything." Elijah closed his eyes for a moment, not to sleep, but to block out the frustration rising inside. So many moving pieces, so little time. Celeste moved closer. "There's something else." Elijah opened his eyes again. "I reviewed your EEG scans. The ones filed by Resnick. The timestamps don't match your brain activity. They show suppression during hours. I know you were alert. Forgery. Yes," she whispered, "and we'll need someone credible to verify it." He tapped out, "Who?" Celeste hesitated. "There's someone. A woman I trained under in Munich, Dr. Helena Wirth. She's old-school independent, no corporate ties. If we bring her in secretly—" Elijah nodded. "Trust her? I'd trust her with my life." He blinked once, firmly. Then slowly, painfully, he typed, "Time to move." That night they activated the second phase of their plan. Celeste contacted Dr. Wirth using a secure voice relay system sharing the falsified EEG logs and a sample of Elijah's unedited real-time brainwaves. Within hours, the woman responded, "This is criminal. I'm on a train by morning." Meanwhile, the hidden mic in Damon's room began to pay dividends. Celeste arrived breathless from the surveillance feed room, holding her tablet like it contained gold. He said it. She played the recording. "As long as Resnick submits the report, the board won't hesitate," Damon's voice echoed. "With Elijah, under Lumiere dies. We sell the IP. Ava handles the cover-up. Simple." Then Ava's voice. And if he wakes up, he won't. That's what the third dose is for. You think I'd leave that to chance?" Elijah's hand trembled with rage. This wasn't corporate politics. This was attempted murder. Celeste's eyes were locked on his. "This is it, Elijah. We take this to the board before they vote. We show them the truth." But Elijah wasn't finished. Slowly, he tapped out one last message for the night. "No. We show them me." Celeste stared. "You mean, appear in person blink. But that's less than 5 days. You can barely sit upright." Elijah raised a weak hand, just slightly, and forced a nod. Celeste's face softened into something between fear and admiration. "You're insane," she whispered. "But okay. Let's give them the ghost they thought they buried." The ghost awakens. The next 4 days were a race against time, against sedatives, against fatigue, against the ruthless ambition of those who wanted Elijah gone. Dr. Helena Worth arrived at Bellature under the guise of a visiting stroke specialist. With silver hair, sharp eyes, and an air of no-nonsense authority, she immediately commanded respect from the staff. No one questioned her as she entered Elijah's suite that night with a sealed briefcase and a portable EEG scanner. She took one look at Elijah's twitching fingers and half-raised eyelids and said, "This man is not in a coma." "Can you prove it?" Celeste asked, hovering nearby, both hopeful and terrified. Dr. Worth nodded briskly. "With this, yes." She placed delicate electrodes across Elijah's scalp and temples, booting up the device. Within seconds, the monitor displayed rhythmic brain waves and active alpha patterns. "His prefrontal cortex is fully engaged," she muttered. "Minimal sedative interference. The prior scans were doctored." Elijah's heart thumped. It was happening. "I'll record this and write a formal affidavit," Dr. Worth said. "But he still looks frail. If you want him to stand in front of that board, we'll need to accelerate recovery." Celeste knelt by Elijah's side. "Can you do this, Blink?" The next 2 days were grueling. Celeste worked around the clock, massaging his limbs, guiding him through chair-assisted squats, speech muscle stimulation, and breathing exercises. Every motion made Elijah feel like his bones were on fire. His body screamed, but his mind was laser-focused. By day 3, he stood with a cane. By day 4, he could walk 10 feet. And that was all he needed. At the same time, Celeste uploaded encrypted copies of the forged EEG records and Resnick's financial transactions provided by the Geneva whistleblower to Diana's team, now working from a secure location in France. The mic recording of Damon and Ava was edited into a single devastating 3-minute clip. On the morning of the board vote, snow fell heavily across Geneva. Helion's 12-member board convened via private jet and encrypted video uplink to Bellacure's conference facility. They believed they were there to sign off on Elijah's incapacitation and transfer company leadership to Damon Cross. Damon arrived early. Ava followed, dressed in somber black eyes dry. Resnick sat in the corner, pale and silent. "Ladies and gentlemen," Damon said, standing at the head of the polished glass table. "As you all know, Elijah's condition has regrettably failed to improve. The enclosed medical report from Dr. Resnick confirms irreversible cognitive impairment. For the sake of Helion's future, I propose we invoke Article 7, Executive Incapacitation, transferring all operational authority to the acting CEO." He slid a folder across the table, smiling with artificial humility. But one of the board members, an older man named Suresh Nanda, raised an eyebrow. "Dr. Resnick, I'd like you to explain these findings personally." Resnick cleared his throat, but said nothing. Before anyone could press him, the double doors to the room swung open. Gasps filled the air. Elijah Cross stepped inside. He wore a tailored charcoal suit. His left hand gripped a dark wooden cane. His face was drawn but steady. His eyes burned with clarity. "Before you vote on my death," he said, his voice raspy, but commanding you might want to hear from the corpse. The room froze. Ava turned pale. Damon took a step back, mouth agape. Resnick sank into his chair. Celeste and Dr. Worth followed silently behind him. Elijah walked slowly to the head of the table, standing in front of the very seat Damon had tried to steal. "Let me tell you a story," he said, "about ambition, betrayal, and the cost of underestimating a man who built this company from nothing." Then he reached into Celeste's hands, took the tablet, and pressed play. Damon's voice echoed through the room, "With Elijah under Lumiere dies." Ava handles the cover-up. Simple. Gasps again. Suresh stood up. "What the hell is this?" Elijah raised a hand. "There's more." Celeste stepped forward and placed a flash drive on the table. Dr. Worth spoke calmly. "These are the corrected EEG scans." Mr. Cross was awake. For nearly 2 weeks, the sedation protocol was manipulated to simulate coma conditions. Resnick stood suddenly. I was under pressure." "No," Elijah cut in. "You were paid. We have the transactions. Offshore. Dirty money for a dirty cover-up." Damon's face had gone bloodless. "I recommend," Elijah said, "we now vote on something else, the immediate suspension of Damon Cross, Ava Chen, and Dr. Resnick pending criminal investigation." The board, shell-shocked, nodded one by one. The tide had turned. Elijah wasn't just back. He was reclaiming everything. The fall of masks, the silence in the boardroom was deafening. After Elijah's explosive reappearance, the board members exchanged looks, some stunned, others angry, and a few quietly ashamed for having doubted the man who had built Helion Dynamics from the ground up. Damon Cross, usually eloquent and unshakable, looked like a man watching his entire world collapse. "This is a farce," he blurted. This can't be legal. We need time to verify this footage." "No," said Elizabeth Yuan, the board's chief compliance officer. "We need time to verify how deep this conspiracy goes." She turned to Elijah. "Do you have evidence this wasn't just the actions of a few rogue individuals? I do," Elijah said, turning toward Celeste, who handed him another folder. "Dr. Worth, our independent neurologist, submitted her affidavit to the Swiss authorities this morning. Diana Coleman. My general counsel is filing a case in the EU courts with proof of criminal medical negligence and attempted corporate theft." Then, with an almost imperceptible nod, Elijah said, "Play it." Celeste tapped a remote on her tablet, and a second video began. It showed Damon pacing in a hospital hallway, whispering to Dr. Resnick, "Keep him sedated until the vote. Once I'm in charge, we'll say it was irreversible. He's a hero, sure, but people move on. Let nature finish the job." One board member stood up so fast her chair toppled. "This is attempted murder," she exclaimed. Damon lunged for the tablet, but Elijah was faster. He stepped between him and Celeste, raising his cane not to strike, but to draw a boundary. "You don't touch her, or anyone else in this room again." Damon froze. Ava looked around the room as if searching for an escape. Her voice trembled. "I didn't know. Damon told me it was just a medical delay, that you were unstable." "No," Elijah said, turning to her, "you knew. You filed for the stock power of attorney transfer the same day the sedatives were increased." He took out a final document. "Bank logs. Your account? You signed it." Her face fell. She had nothing to say. Elijah turned back to the board. "I was willing to forgive betrayal. But not this. Not a plot to dismantle a project meant to educate the poorest children in the world. Not the murder of Lumiere." Suresh Nanda finally broke the silence. Motion to suspend all implicated parties effective immediately pending a criminal probe. Seconded, said Elizabeth. All in favor. 11 hands went up. Damon stood still as stone. Ava sat down, defeated. Resnick began to weep quietly. Elijah took a long breath and said, "Escort them out." 2 Halian security guards entered. Damon tried to push past them but was restrained. "You think you've won," he shouted. "You think Lumiere will survive? The defense lobby will kill it in the courts." Elijah locked eyes with him. "Let them try," he said. "I built Lumiere to illuminate the world, not to please it." As the doors shut behind the disgraced trio, the board exhaled collectively. Then Elizabeth turned to Elijah. "We owe you a formal apology." "No," Elijah said. "You owe the world a better company than the one you nearly let them destroy." Then he looked at Celeste, who stood quietly in the corner trying not to cry. He offered her his hand, and she took it. Rebuilding from the rubble. It had been only hours since the board meeting, but the world was already shifting. Word spread like wildfire across news outlets. Tech billionaire Elijah Cross returns from coma to expose murder plot within his own company. Project Lumiere saved after CEO survives alleged sabotage. Whistleblower nurse uncovers corporate conspiracy. Journalists camped outside Helian's headquarters in Zurich. Former allies of Damon and Ava scrambled to distance themselves. Stock analysts once skeptical of Elijah's social AI vision revised their predictions. The company's value had dropped during the coma, but in the hours following Elijah's return, Helian's share price surged 18%. But Elijah didn't celebrate. He worked. By the following morning, Diana Coleman had returned to Switzerland, welcomed back into the company's inner circle like a warrior. She and Celeste were the first 2 names Elijah added to his new executive ethics board. "You both saved my life," he said, as they sat in the recovery suite, sunlight warming the windows. "Now I need your help to save the company's soul." Celeste shifted uncomfortably. "I'm not a boardroom type. You're exactly what we need," Elijah said. "Integrity, guts, and no allegiance to anything but truth." Diana smiled. "Besides, you've already faced down a murder plot. You'll be fine in a budget meeting." Celeste laughed her first genuine laugh since this all began. Then Dr. Woyerth entered with a leather folder in hand. "I've spoken to the Swiss Health Ministry. An investigation has been launched into Bellicure and Dr. Resnick. He's under arrest and the clinic's license is under review." Elijah closed his eyes in relief. "Justice," he whispered. At last. But Worth wasn't finished. She placed a second folder in front of him. "I did some digging into who funded Resnick's research beyond Damon's bribes. He was receiving grants from a shell company, Innova Holdings." Diana leaned forward. "I know that name. They have ties to Armadine Systems." Celeste's brow furrowed. A weapons manufacturer Wirth nodded grimly. "And major lobbyists against Lumiere's open source model." Elijah stared at the folder in silence. So it hadn't just been a family betrayal. There were more powerful forces working to silence Lumiere. Damon and Ava were just the front, Diana said. The real threat is still out there. Elijah stood up, slowly, still wincing from the muscle strain. "Then we expose them. All of them." He turned to Celeste. "Still with me until the end?" she replied. "No," Elijah said. "This isn't the end. This is where it starts." The next days were a whirlwind of reorganization. Elijah launched a full audit of all corporate partnerships. Legal and cybersecurity teams were tasked with tracing every shell company that ever touched Helian's funding. He froze all pending defense contracts. And then came the press conference. He stood cane in hand in front of a sea of cameras and flashing lights. "I was silenced," he said. "But now I speak not just for myself, But for every innovator told their dream is too generous, too impossible, or too risky. Lumiere was designed to give free, intelligent education to every child, regardless of where they were born. That dream survives, and it will thrive. Applause erupted across the auditorium. Celeste stood in the wings watching him, no longer a patient, no longer a man nearly killed. Now, he was something more. New light, new battles. 2 weeks after the boardroom reckoning, Helion Dynamics was no longer the same company. The recovery was swift but intentional. Every department underwent an ethics review. Elijah reinstated whistleblower protection programs, created an internal watchdog division, and personally mandated the public release of Lumiere's core educational modules, something no corporation of Helion's size had dared before. The response from the public was staggering. Within days, NGOs from 43 countries had requested access to the open-source Lumiere core. Rural schools in Uganda, inner-city community centers in Chicago, and refugee camps in Jordan all began deploying the AI-powered tutoring system. It adjusted to children's emotions, adapted to their learning style, and most importantly, gave them dignity through personalized education. But as Elijah had feared, not everyone celebrated. Anonymous death threats poured in. Lawsuits were threatened by private education conglomerates. A coalition of military contractors accused Helion of national destabilization by removing Lumiere from potential defense applications. Political pundits painted Elijah as idealistic, naive, a genius with no grasp of real politique. Elijah, now physically stronger, though still leaning on his cane, simply replied at a press briefing, "If giving a child in a forgotten village the same educational opportunity as a senator's son makes me naive, then I will wear that label with pride." Meanwhile, Celeste had quietly taken up her new role as Director of Patient Ethics for Helion's newly announced Cross Foundation, a non-profit arm dedicated to reforming medical oversight in private care facilities. She kept a low profile, but to Elijah, she remained the heartbeat of the revolution. One evening, as the Zurich sky turned gold and the office emptied out, Elijah found her standing by a large window, watching kids on the street below giggle at a Lumiere hologram demo projected in the plaza. "They look like they're talking to a friend," she said. "They are," Elijah replied, stepping beside her. Lumiere was designed to be more than a tutor. It listens, it sees, it affirms. Celeste looked up at him. "You could have rebuilt your empire quietly, but you chose war." "I didn't choose war," he said. "They declared it. I just refused to die in silence." She reached out and touched the edge of his cane. "Does it still hurt?" "Every step," Elijah admitted. "But you walk anyway," she said with a smile. He nodded. "Because now every step leads somewhere that matters." Just then, Diana entered with an encrypted envelope. "You'll want to see this," she said. Inside were the latest results of the audit. 10 more companies connected to Innova Holdings, 2 sitting government officials, 3 rival AI firms. All had tried in one way or another to ensure Lumiere would never reach the public. "This was never just about," Helion Elijah said quietly. "They feared what Lumiere represents." "Equality," Celeste added. "Freedom," Diana echoed. Elijah looked at them both. "Then we keep going, even if it costs us everything." Celeste took his hand briefly. "Good," she said. "Because I didn't come this far to watch you back down now." As night fell over Zurich and the city lights blinked on, a new kind of energy pulsed through Helion's glass towers. This wasn't the end of the conspiracy. It was just the beginning of the real fight for transparency, justice, and the light of knowledge. The legacy they tried to bury. 6 months passed. By the time spring arrived in Zurich, Project Lumiere had been rolled out across 22 nations. Schools that had never seen consistent electricity now had AI tutors teaching physics in Swahili. Syrian refugee children long forgotten in limbo were coding in Python. An orphanage in Mumbai sent Elijah a video 27 children singing "Thank You Lumiere" in unison. Elijah watched that clip on a loop for hours. The man who once built machines to analyze neural networks now realized the most powerful algorithm on Earth was compassion, and it needed no code. Back at Helion HQ, the building looked different. Solar panels lined the rooftop. A new R&D lab bore Celeste's name. A quote was carved into the entrance glass, something Elijah had whispered to himself in the darkest days of his coma. They can silence your body, but they can't quiet your purpose. Inside the building, the old war room had been converted into an ethics museum, a small exhibit that chronicled the rise, near collapse, and rebirth of Helion. The infamous tablet with Damon's recording sat in a glass case. A plaque beneath it read, "This is what happens when truth refuses to stay buried." Elijah didn't visit the exhibit often, but he passed by it one afternoon, pausing when he saw a small group of interns gathered around Celeste, who was guiding a tour. "She saved him right," a girl whispered. The nurse Celeste only smiled and said, "He saved himself. I just reminded him he wasn't alone." Later that evening, Elijah joined Celeste at a quiet cafe outside the city. No security detail, no PR managers, just the two of them and the comfort of a silence they both understood. "They tried to write my ending," he said. "They thought burying me would erase the dream. They forgot," Celeste replied, "that some seeds only bloom after being buried." He smiled, looking down at the cup of tea between his hands. "You think we made a dent?" "I think we made a crack," she said, big enough to let the light in. As they stood to leave, a teenager approached Elijah, nervous, fumbling with a phone. "Mr. Cross, I just wanted to say thank you. Lumiere helped me pass my exams, first in my family to get a university scholarship." Elijah paused, humbled. He shook the boy's hand. "Then I've already won." They walked off into the fading light of the day. Two people who had met in silence conspired in the shadows and rewritten history, not with power, but with persistence, truth, and the courage to believe in something bigger than themselves. The empire Elijah had built had nearly been stolen, but from that near death came a new legacy, one no one could ever take away again. Page 10. Reflection. What the world tried to silence. The story of Elijah Cross is not just a tale of betrayal and survival. It's a masterclass in resilience, purpose, and the transformative power of moral courage. On the surface, it's about a billionaire who pretends to be in a coma to uncover a conspiracy. But beneath that is something far more human, a man forced into silence by those closest to him, using that very silence as a weapon of strategy. At its heart, this story explores 5 profound truths. 1. Betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Elijah wasn't attacked by strangers or foreign saboteurs. The ones who tried to bury him were family, those who shared his name and his past. It's a painful reminder that those closest to us are also the ones with the greatest capacity to hurt us. But betrayal, when met with composure and clarity, can also be the catalyst for revolution. 2. Silence can be powerful when chosen. Elijah's silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. In a world that values speed reaction and loud declarations, his stillness gave him an edge. He listened. He watched. And when he finally spoke, every word carried the weight of a man who had earned his voice. 3. Not all heroes wear suits. Celeste didn't have billions. She didn't sit on boards or hold patents. But she held the truth in her hands, and she refused to look away. Her quiet integrity, persistence, and willingness to risk her career for a stranger is a testament to the silent warriors in every industry, the nurses, the aides, the watchdogs who do the right thing when no one is watching. She reminds us that sometimes saving the world means saving just one person so they can rise and change the world themselves. 4. Purpose is more powerful than profit. What nearly got Elijah killed wasn't money, it was meaning. The world wasn't ready for a system like Lumiere, open, free, and empowering. Systems that give power to the powerless often threaten the status quo. But Elijah chose to pursue impact over income. And in the end, doing good turned out to be good business. We live in a time where ethics are often pitted against economics. Elijah's story challenges that false dichotomy. 5. Legacy is not built on what you keep, but what you give away. Elijah could have stayed quiet after reclaiming control. He could have settled scores, rebuilt his fortune, and faded into obscurity. But he didn't. He chose to expand his mission, invite the world into his vision, and create systems that outlived his personal victories. In doing so, he redefined what it means to lead, to build, to leave something behind that lifts others long after you're gone. The life lesson. We all face moments where we feel voiceless, cornered, or underestimated, sometimes by our bosses, sometimes by family, sometimes by life itself. But your silence, your suffering, your stillness can be transformed into something mighty if you choose not to surrender. When you feel buried, remember, you are not being buried. You might be getting planted. And what grows from that may be the very thing that lights the world.